Welcome to Exhibition, an Xbox podcast, episode number 27. My name is Samuel Adams, and first and foremost, I hope that you had a fantastic Thanksgiving week if you did celebrate it. Of course, now we are getting into the month of December, very exciting holiday time for millions around the world, and as you can see behind me, I've already got the Christmas decor up. But I have a bit of a present myself for you this week, because instead of diving into the gaming news, I'm going to be sitting down with Wren Brier and Tim Dawson of Xhibition, the studio behind Unpacking, otherwise known as Unpacking Life, which is one of my favorite indies of the year, and in fact, it's one of my favorite games of the year. I was inspired to reach out and talk to them because their game is just so fantastic, and if you would like to check it out, it's out right now on Xbox Game Pass for PC and for console, but on top of that, you can pick it up on Nintendo Switch as well. But without further ado, let's just go ahead and dive into it. Welcome to Exhibition, an Xbox podcast, and once again, I'm joined by two incredible guests, and they have put together one of my favorite games of the year, and I thought that it would be a great opportunity to have them on and share more about how they made this game. And of course, I'm talking about Unpacking, something that I have discussed on social media as of late. And for the Xbox fans out there, it's something that's available in Game Pass for console and PC. Highly recommend you dive in and give it a shot. And it's also available on PC and Nintendo Switch as well. But my two guests are Wren Brier and Tim Dawson, who have put together this game, and they've agreed to join me. How are you guys doing today?
Pretty good.
Yeah, that's good. It's morning here. Or noon, I guess, now.
Yeah, I was going to say we have a huge difference because you guys are in Australia and then I'm in North Carolina. So I'm night. You guys are all the way in the next day. So it looks like we're making it through another one. But if you guys want to start off with just giving us a little overview of your backstory, you know, how everything came to be and how you got to where you are today with Unpacking.
Yeah. So like we're both game developers. We were working at different, like I've worked at a bunch of studios around Australia. Started at a company called Ratbag. Ended up at working on LA Noire at one point and some other bigger studios, and then founded Xhibition back in 2013, I think. We've made one. Xhibition made one game before this.
Which is Salt and Cactus.
Yes. And
me? So I'm Wren. I worked on Jetpack Joyride and Fruit Ninja, but just like the live ops teams. So I was doing updates for both of those games, mainly Jetpack. Other than that, I've mostly worked as a freelancer on just like various little projects. And Unpacking is my first indie title.
Yeah, we started developing it kind of as something to work on together because it just seemed like a cool idea, and it kind of took a bit of a life of its own. It got a bunch of we got a bunch of recognition about it, and it ended up becoming Witchbeam's next project. So that's kind of that's the very short version of how it came together.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know that I was checking out the press kit before we started talking, and it sounded like you guys had kind of a viral sensation on your hands with how it came to be. I know that the GIF started to circulate, and then all of a sudden, the traction really picked up pretty quickly with it.
Yeah, we made like our first GIF for social media, which was like our prototype kitchen level being unpacked, and like fast forwarded that. And we didn't really expect anything because it was like our first GIF on that account, but it went viral. So first I think it was Rami shared it, and then someone posted it on Reddit and like on Giphy Cat or something, and that just went wild. So that was very exciting. We absolutely did not expect that. But that kind of that made publishers get in touch with us, and
Spring Queensland, which is our local government supporting body for
film and TV and games,
reached out. So like a bunch of stuff started happening, and we're like, oh no, this is a viable project that we should
And but I mean, even before this, we got some really cool validation in the form of this Games Accelerator program, Stugun, which we were accepted to with our initial prototype and like a little video that we made to pitch ourselves to it. So For those that don't know, Stugan is a nonprofit game accelerator program in Sweden, where they get together a bunch of game developers from all over the world to live and work in Sweden for 2 months on their own indie games, like in a cabin in the woods.
Wow.
It was like us. Yeah, it's really cool. It was us and I think 13 other teams. And I think Unpacking got picked out of more than 400 applications. So we felt very lucky.
Yeah, absolutely unique experience.
Yeah, once in a lifetime kind of experience.
So was it really like a cabin in the woods? Like you guys kind of receded and you were like, we're going into the wilderness. We're going to make something amazing. Let's see what happens kind of thing.
Yeah, so it was because we didn't know what to expect. Basically, being told we're going to be taken out to a cabin in the woods in Sweden to work in a game sounds like kind of a horror movie setup, but it was actually a ski resort that was in the summer, so it was kind of not being used. We were kind of camping out in the main, kind of the big main building of it.
Yeah, like each team had their own cabin that they slept in, but we all like ate and worked in one big cabin together. We had like the top floor was where all of our desks were set up, kind of like a co-working space, and then the bottom floor was where we ate and played, and there was like a pool underneath. So once a week we got to go to that pool.
Yeah, there was a lake. It was really hot because it was in the middle of Swedish summer, so like we kind of took to doing the whole like just midday lake swim. It was
that was fun.
Very very surreal thinking back to it now, because it's all pre-COVID and different world.
Yeah, things have certainly changed, but that sounds fantastic. So with the rest of the developers that were there with you, did you work or did you provide some insight on their projects and they kind of came over and talked about yours, or was it, how did the group change the way that things kind of came together in those first couple of days there?
We definitely, it wasn't just the first couple of days, like it was throughout the entire thing. We all gave each other feedback, and we used to do, but we did like playtesting nights where everyone would have their games there and we'd all play each other's games and give feedback. The biggest insight that came from one of those days was when we first implemented the validation mode in Unpacking. Our friend Philip said, well, he seemed to be very frustrated with the game. He really didn't like being told that he couldn't put things in various places. And it made sense because like we like picked the zones where items could be left based on how we would organize our house, and someone else might organize their place differently. And so we suddenly realized, oh, this is not like a game of like guess how Wren and Tim like to organize their house. It's a game about self-expression and organizing things how you like them. So we made the game a lot more lenient in where you can leave stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say I have a question later on that we'll kind of jump back to, because I've been in my full-time job, my coworker has also been playing on Nintendo Switch, and so every day we'll come in, I'll send her a screenshot of something that I've done, and then she'll send a screenshot of something she's done, and then she's just confused as to why I put that thing over there versus having an entire row of chickens on one specific shelf, like that kind of thing. But to start off from the very beginning, within Unpacking, one of the first things that stood out to me, and obviously it's the core focus of the game, is this exploration of how lives come together through environments. What was it like building environments that were able to tell a story without any actual spoken dialogue at all within the game? I think that's something that's super powerful with Unpacking.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was we kind of had the kind of broad strokes idea. Like take level 3, for instance. You move in with housemates, and so you're moving in with other people. Like, and obviously we have our own experiences to draw on automatically to think about what might that living space look like. Wren based the dressmaker form in the living room on a housemate that
my old housemate. I mean, that whole apartment is very inspired by my own experience living with housemates, where like I lived with actually a lot of different housemates over the years, but one housemate was like quite messy, so we were like, let's let's have, a messy housemate. And one housemate was like a cosplayer. So it was like, let's have that dress form in the living room. That's such a nice kind of set piece to kind of tell you something about someone. I mean, that's mainly where the similarities end. Like there were, I guess, I think I had a desk kind of like that once, and I had that my kitchen looked kind of similar to that kitchen, but like in terms of the characters, they are actually quite different.
Yeah, and once you kind of start with that kind of like inspiration of what you're pulling from, then you're thinking about the game design of like, well, what items would that result in, and what would you take from those items? Because ultimately, any of the design we do, it's like you can come up with all these ideas. It's like the tide. That you come up with these ideas, and only the things that can be told through items should be left behind. So some ideas just kind of flow away and don't really go anywhere. And it's the ones that leave behind actual items that we can implement, or rules that we could set up, or some sort of scenario, like there's an in progress like Dungeons and Dragons game happening. And so that's something tangible that we can represent in the game. There's other things that we can't represent in the game, so we don't even, like, they don't end up going into the game, even if they're in our heads and we think about them. So like that's the design. It's this back and forth between the big ideas and then what we can actually do in the game. And it was really exciting because we found out all these things we could do that we didn't really think we could do at first. But when you start thinking along those lines, you go, oh, actually
it's like what items can tell stories.
Yeah.
But the outline for the overall game was something we came up with very early. So we knew like our general story beats, and that we felt we could communicate well through this kind of method, which was like, I don't know how spoilery do we want to get here.
I would think you can probably, I wouldn't give it all away, but you can hint at certain things, I would say.
Sure. So it's like we knew that we wanted to start with like a child's bedroom. So it doubles, like it works on two levels. One, it like introduces the player to the idea. It works as a tutorial level. It's just the one room, and it's also like very friendly items. And it's like it's the start of a story. And it makes sense that it's just the one room because you're a kid. You're not going to unpack like the whole house, and you don't need to unpack your closet because maybe your mom does it for you. And so we start there. And then our next step is you move to a university accommodation. And so that lets us have a full apartment, but a very small one. So you only have a bedroom and a bathroom and a kitchen, and the kitchen is like very small. It's a kitchenette. And you learn that you can, so you have entire apartments in this game, but we are onboarding you to this concept slowly. And you also learn that, items come with you from the previous move. And you're learning that, I'm actually like learning about what's happening with this character throughout her life. I'm following a story, and that's what those first two levels teach you. And then third level, you move out with housemates, and suddenly we introduce a concept of there are other people that can live with you, and they have items too, and they are already unpacked. But you have to fit your life around their life, like literally and figuratively. So you're unpacking your things and you're putting them away, but you're not allowed to move anyone else's stuff. And then in the next level, like and that level also is like the biggest level that you've been in so far, but it's not a huge deal to unpack it because, again, a lot of the items are already there. The only room that you're unpacking from scratch is your own bedroom. But then the next level, you move out with a boyfriend, and you are allowed to move the boyfriend stuff, and most of it, and you might not know it going in, and you're trying to like fit yourself around his stuff the same way that you did in the previous level. But eventually you realize that he's not made room for you. So your housemates did a little, but this guy has not. So you have to move his stuff and make room for yourself, which is both interesting gameplay wise and also interesting narratively, because it tells you, this guy didn't make room for me, I need to do it myself. Is like, that's something that you do in real life when someone is not giving you the space you deserve in a relationship. And of course, the beat that everyone talks about is the diploma, where you can't take off the things that he has on his walls. So you have this diploma that you're supposed to hang, and there's no room to hang it. And you search the house, and you're like, the only wall that's free is like above the toilet. And obviously you're not going to put it there. The game won't let you leave it there. So you go, okay, I guess it goes under the bed or in the closet. And then the game's like, ta-da, that's correct. And you're like, what? Mm-hmm. So that was kind of the kind of storytelling we were going for. Having these like wordless beats that as you play through them, you feel like you are the character.
Yeah, I think that was something that was handled incredibly well. Going back to my friend, the way that she described it to me, I turned her on to Unpacking, and then she purchased it on Nintendo Switch. And as she was playing it, she said, I feel like this is my life. She's a graphic designer, so there's a similar kind of situation where she kind of grew up in the same way that the character does, and the beats are kind of the same. And she recently moved in with her significant other. And so as they started doing this, it really struck a chord with her because she just had this, And so obviously her significant other made room for her, but you get to see the other side where if somebody doesn't make room for you there, then how will that grow into the years to come? What will that turn out to be? And obviously in Unpacking, you see that. But the degree thing is something that I first noticed whenever I put it under the bed. I was like, wow, it worked, like that kind of thing. But it was incredibly interesting to see how, you have these very emotional story moments that aren't told through facial expressions, and they aren't told through dialogue specifically. It's just told situationally. And I think that's something that you guys have done incredibly well.
Thanks.
Yeah. There's a lot of it's funny, like the relatable part of the story, I think, comes from there's a lot of ability to reflect on items. Like when an item comes, you have an item in the game, and you can either think about like, does it really, it either relates to you, in which case it gives you those kind of connection with like the art stuff in particular. Like you're taking out art stuff, you're either recognizing, going, oh, I had something like that, or it feels kind of interesting and exotic. So either way, there's a kind of a connection there.
Yeah, and I think like a lot of the story is quite universal because most people live, in a house with their parents and move at least once and have the experience of organizing their room. And a lot of people go to university. A lot of people live with housemates. A lot of people move with their first partner. It's things that we all go through, and they're very like large beats. They're not like really out there. It's not like you went to space or you, like opened a shop or something. It's like something that is very universal. So even if you're not like an artist, you can be like, oh yeah, I went to university and studied something, and then I graduated and lived with some friends. And I had trouble kicking my career off at the start. So I like worked at a coffee shop or at a grocery store or something. So there's like a lot you can relate to, even if it's not directly. And the interesting thing as well is like that a lot is vague enough that people can see different things in the story. Like we have specific things in mind for all the story beats, but there's a lot that's kind of left open to interpretation. So it's been really interesting to see people talk about, I guess, mild spoilers. Sorry, guys. The cane that comes out in a later level. And I've seen people say, oh, she must have had an accident, like a climbing accident, because she doesn't have climbing gear anymore. So that's probably why she has a cane. But people with like chronic pain, chronic injury, or chronic disability say, oh, she has a chronic disability. Like I can see it. I can see it in the cane and the painkillers and the back heat pads and the hot water bottle. And so it's like, and it, of these two, there is an interpretation that we intended. And I would say, yeah, for me, that's the chronic condition interpretation. But if someone else goes, yeah, she had an injury, and they think this quite possibly because they had an injury, or they know someone who had an injury. Someone that I know said, oh, this cane, like she got injured at her job, didn't she? And I'm like, no, but later I found out that's because she has a friend who had like some shelves fall on her at work, and now walks with a cane. So it's like you instantly put into the story what's happening in your life, and the character becomes this amalgam of the character that we wrote and the character that the player writes.
Yeah, and I think that's something that adds a very personal touch to it. Even as somebody who, like you said, may not have had the same experiences as this person that's in the story, there are still points and there are still story beats and there are still items throughout the game that I do find relatable that kept me coming back. Obviously, there are so many games on the market today that everybody can jump from game to game. But whenever I play my games in the morning, I'm strange like that. I'll wake up at 5 o'clock and just jive on. But it was one that I just knew that I like, that's what I'm playing until I finish it. That's my thing, because it was so personal and it did have such a deep connection to it. And I think a big part of that is the world building, and the sound is a huge part of the experience that's brought in Unpacking. And I think I saw a tweet a couple of weeks ago where 14,000 Foley sounds, or over 14,000, are in this game. And the smallest ones are the ones that always blew my mind. And you guys might have noticed a couple of my tweets if you've been seeing some things that I've tagged you in. But like shaking the board game box and the amount of little, like you can hear the little pieces and things shaking around, and the shower mat where you stick it on the floor and you hear all the little suction cups coming off. Like those little details made such a difference in my experience, to where it was just, I don't know if realistic is the word, but it added such a touch of, I know that, So what was it like putting that many sounds into the game, and was that the vision to begin with, really?
So we got very lucky. So when I founded Witchbeam, it was with the designer Sanarden, and also Jeff Van Dyke, who's a composer and sound designer, and he's worked on a lot of big projects and a lot of big stuff. He's worked on the Total War series and the Alien Isolation. And he's just an exceptional sound designer, and just always goes above and beyond when he's working on stuff. And we were really, like, after Stugan, we came back from Sweden, and suddenly people were talking about the game. We were kind of like, we were lucky enough that Jeff was keen to be involved and wanted to be involved. And his approach to sound design is just very good across the board. But I think he realized really early on as well that the items were these huge personality items, parts of the game, and really wanted items to communicate what they were made of and the surfaces. So like I worked very closely with them to figure out how we were going to design the game so that there was an audio surface system. So like every surface in the game can be like plastic or wooden floorboards or shelf or
metal,
porcelain, yeah. And then that means that every item can have this kind of complicated matrix of what sounds it's going to play when it's put down on it. He worked with his wife to record huge amounts of sounds. They dedicated one of their bedrooms to like the Foley recording studio, and bought a piece of bench top so they could have like all the different surface types present in this one room and record like variations of everything. So that's the other thing. If you pick up a cup and put it down and like 3 times in a row, you'll probably hear a slightly different clunk sound each time, so you don't get that kind of identical sound.
Yeah, even on the same surface.
Yeah. And on top of that, like a lot of items, you mentioned the shaking the board game. They have things like that which react to when they're moving, but also sweetness. So like a lot of, which is what Jeff was calling them, some items will play a sound when they're put down, but they'll also mix in another sound to represent the fact that they've got like pieces inside them or some other acoustic property that is
like the ukulele. It's like a piece of wood being placed down, but it's also got that the strings, and it makes kind of like the sound that an instrument would make when you place it down. It's like a dong sort of noise.
And wherever possible, Jeff would go out and like record he borrowed one of Wren's ukuleles to do a little sound pass with that. We got a little wooden mannequin so that Jeff could record the sounds of of rearranging it. So like,
yeah, and the Rubik's Cube.
yeah, it's like so many little details, but like it adds so much. And the ambience as well. The other thing that a lot of people don't really register is that every room has like the running, like if you're in a kitchen, you can hear the slight hum of the refrigerator running, and you can hear the bird noises outside or light traffic drone, and it's meant to just be there, but it gives that richness. So when you're playing it, you just feel like you're in a space. We had that both with people playing it, but even at events, people would like be at PAX or something, like PAX Australia, and they'd put on headphones, and for the time they were playing the demo, they were just in this nice little bubble of being like calm serenity, and then they'd take it off and go back into PAX, which
of course it's giant.
Busy.
Yeah. And I gotta say that the whole audio direction, like that was entirely from Jeff. It's not like we went to Jeff and said, so this is what we're thinking of doing for the audio. It's like we came to him with the game and we're like, what do you want to do with this? And that's what he came up with. And it's like we involved him really early on, I think about like 2 months in or so, 3 months. And like his vision for the audio really like elevated what the game could be. And I think it was so interesting and like beneficial to include our audio person like that early on in the project.
Yeah, it fundamentally changed the way that I experienced the game. And like you said, it's like taking you out into another world whenever you put on headphones. Obviously, I have high quality headphones and I'm playing on a PC, but even with a pair of earbuds on a Switch, it can just become this nice little escape from whatever you have going on. It's just a very nice, pleasant little world to unpack your life in. And one of the first things I noticed whenever I began playing the game is that I moved the spray bottle onto the back of the toilet. That's where I always chose to place it. And so whenever I put it, I would move it into each of the three. I think there are 3 locations on the back of a toilet where you can place it, somewhere around there. But I'd pick it up and put it down multiple times, and just to see how, it was just fun to be able to see how often the sound actually changed. But it built the world into an incredible little nugget. I love it. It's fantastic. So when it comes to accessibility, that's a big thing that I noticed on the press kit is there's a lot that's been done to make sure that anybody can really enjoy the game. Can you share more about how that all came together?
Yeah, so that was actually really interesting because it's not like when we first started making the game, we're making an ultra accessible game. It was just kind of, first it came out of just the kind of game that it was and the kind of gameplay it has. It's a slow-paced game. It doesn't have any timers or scores or end state or like fail states. So it's already accessible by its nature. And then like there's the picking items up and putting them down. It was I think this was Tim's decision to be like, yeah, you pick up with a click and put it down with a click. It's not like a click and drag thing. And that turned out to be actually a really good accessibility decision because turns out that clicking and dragging is something that a lot of people with mobility issues can't do. So that was, I don't know if it was a fluke or if that was Tim intuiting that this is better gameplay. And then beyond that, we just kind of leaned into it. So we would get like suggestions from friends or people playing the game. I think one of the earliest ones we had was someone said, oh no, I don't like how the room switching happens. Like we posted a GIF of how our rooms switch and they were like, oh, I really like this game and I really want to play it, but I think that will make me feel really ill. Like they have issues with motion sickness. So we were like, oh, well, we don't want people to feel ill while playing our game, but we do like this transition for most people. So let's have an alternate version where you can just have the rooms fade in and out if you want. And then like another one was a friend of mine was playing and he was having trouble seeing the details on the items. And we were like, well, good news, we've got zooming, because we were already thinking about how we were going to implement it for Switch. And the buttons were right there, but he didn't see the buttons because his vision wasn't that good. Mm-hmm. So we were like, all right, we need options to make the buttons bigger. So that's how we ended up with that function, And then like one of the biggest ones I think was someone suggested to us at a show. They were like, wow, I think this game would be amazing for my students. And he was like a special ed teacher. Said, I think this game would be amazing for my students, but I think they would struggle with like the validation system, with like being told that everything has a particular place that has to go. Could you do like a mode where you can just put items anywhere? And we were like, can we? And we thought about it and we were like, oh, actually, yeah, we can. And we added that into our accessibility menu. And that's something, it's like, Tim, I think you've said it before, that it's like curb cuts. That curb cuts are like those, what do you call them? Like
when you cut into the concrete of a curb to
of the sidewalk to let someone be able to like walk onto the road, or rather get a wheelchair onto the road. But they also just work for everyone. They work for people with strollers, or like a shopping trolley, or even I always like saw them as like, this is a place where it's good to cross, like as an indication that it's safe to cross here. Mm-hmm. And so it's like this thing that's specifically designed for disability, but makes life better for everyone. And I think the allow items everywhere mode does that, because it allows people who otherwise wouldn't be able to play, like whether because they have like a mental or cognitive disability, or because they're a small child, or if they just want to arrange a room however they want, which we found, some people just want to do that. That feature is there for them.
Yeah, like a lot of the kind of accessibility ended up like there's a strong crossover between like good design and accessible games, in the sense of like you don't want to give players more buttons to use than they need to, just because that's a good game design kind of conceit in general. And a lot of the stuff we were doing in Unpacking ended up aligning with that anyway. And so then we went ahead with like remappable controls and a few other things, just to, I guess that's where we came from. We realized we had this game that was already trying to target a lot of people that maybe didn't play games in general and was suited to them, and then just looked for a few extra things that would, it's always about looking at things that would get in the way of somebody playing the game or experiencing the game, and saying, can we take that away, or can we have an option that bypasses it?
Yeah. I think I had more I wanted to add, but I forgot. No, it's okay. Let's move on. If I'll remember, I'll let you know.
Yeah, but be sure to chime in. I think that's all fantastic, because accessibility, I love how much it's become a big focus. And obviously, as an Xbox podcast, we talk a lot about Xbox things, and the controller, the adaptive controller that was made a few years ago, where button mapping is, completely up to how the player chooses to play or can play. I think that kind of was a big turning point for a lot of people in the public eye. And so now accessibility I didn't used to pay attention to accessibility because it's not something that impacts me personally. But I think that to hear that you guys listened to what, your friends were saying and the people that were playing your game were saying, and to be able to bake those suggestions in and those, opportunities to open the game up to new people, that spreads how many people can actually access it. That's a huge win for the game and for gaming in general. I would consider this, obviously all games are art, but this is clearly something that's, on a different level for me personally, that I think everybody should be able to tap into regardless of their ability level. So that's fantastic.
I just remembered what I was going to say. It was about the Switch controls. So on Switch specifically, we developed the Switch port simultaneously to the PC version, because we knew we wanted to do a lot with the control schemes to make it extra accessible and more fun to play, because I get really annoyed when ports don't try, and especially ports on the Switch, because you have so many options on the Switch with the touch screen and everything else. Why not make use of that, especially for a game that's so on PC it's a cursor based game. You use your mouse, and almost entirely your mouse. And so we wanted the experience to feel seamless and very natural on the Switch too. So we were like, okay, we'll come up with a design that we're happy with for the gamepad. So we designed, we had a porting house do our Xbox port and also assist us with the Switch port. But the control schemes for both of them, that was us like going from the ground up. What would be the best experience here? We went back and forth about a lot of things. I remember one thing in particular that we had to work on a lot with gamepad was like how to control photo mode. We initially had something with a lot of like the little tabs mapped to buttons, and eventually got rid of that and went, you just use the cursor, it's fine. But yeah, it was a big process to translate all the controls from mouse and keyboard to gamepad. And then we went also like, okay, how do we do this with touch? And that ended up being surprisingly complicated, because you think that mouse and touch are pretty similar. And everyone told us, oh, this game would be great for like a touchscreen for like an iPad. And we thought, yeah, that should be an easy transition. And then when we started working on that, it turned out that it's actually really complicated. So to begin with, like on a mouse, you've got two buttons. You've got a right click. You can't right click in touch. And I know that there's like shortcuts like clicking with two fingers and things like that, but that's not intuitive unless you're like super used to the Apple ecosystem. So we were like, we need something different. So we ended up with like a button that comes up like next to your item for rotating. And then we've got like special interactions with some items on right click. And that's when you're not holding an item, and we had to come up with some special solution for that. But another big thing was just like, you don't have a hover state in touch. And that was a huge deal, because our game relies on you hovering items over things. So we're like, okay, so it's click and drag, but like we had just like all these other considerations to go with click and drag. So it's like just moving items around is actually like 3 different systems combined in touch mode. It's all like we had to give everything a lot of consideration. And then on top of that, we also have a gyro control scheme. So if you're playing on a TV, you can control the cursor with the Joy-Con, like with the tilt controls, and it works pretty well.
Yeah, that's amazing. I haven't had a chance to try out the Nintendo Switch gyroscopic controls myself, but that's certainly something that I'm going to beg my friend to bring in her Nintendo Switch into the office for. But I think that's amazing to be able to bring the experience to wherever people are, whether it's PC or a console or a handheld or any kind of device like that. It spreads the community, and it also brings more people to what you guys have made, which is always fantastic. You discussed earlier today on the Twitter feed about people asking for DLC. And I thought that the way that you addressed it was very well. So I didn't know if you wanted to go into that a little bit further, because you are very satisfied with the story that's told in Unpacking. And I think that's a fantastic choice.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I mean, I think some games work really well as kind of like frameworks and open-ended kind of, something to build on. But like we always envisaged Unpacking as this kind of self-contained story. We wouldn't want to keep doing the next level, for instance. It's like we're very happy with where it ends. And it kind of like what we spent so long working on it and released like fully without any kind of early access or any kind of like, things, so that we could go, here it is, it's finished. You can, if you play it on day one, you get what we hope is the final and full experience. And like, I appreciate that in games, right? Some games are kind of ongoing and you're going, this is my new lifestyle, and others are like something that you can kind of play and enjoy and be like, that was meaningful or something.
Personally, I really like short games, and I think it's interesting because like the older our audience is, like so I've seen, we've got people across the entire spectrum of like more hardcore gamers to super casual. We've got like young children and like dads and little kids playing together, and moms with newborns like playing it while holding their baby. We've got like everything. And I've noticed that like our older audience are very appreciative that this is a short game generally, that they are like, it's like the younger audience is like money poor but time rich, and the older audience is I don't know if money rich, but like they have more money and they're time poor. And so I think a lot of people who are time poor appreciate a short contained experience that they can really get a lot out of. And they can come back to it and replay and get more if they want, but like they don't need to make this huge time investment into it.
Yeah, I think that's
where I fall to.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. I'm 24, just for reference, and so I graduated college 2 years ago at this point, and I've been a player, a gamer, whatever you want to call us, somebody who's a fan of the medium, my entire life. And obviously, like you said, in middle school, high school, you have 10 hours a day that you can pour into doing whatever you want. And then when high school hits, you begin to get, more opportunities to do stuff. You join band, college, you start to get internships and things like that. And so now, as somebody who works full time and then does stuff like this on the side, I don't have the time to pour, 75 hours into the newest RPG 9 times out of 10. Like, I just can't do it. And so whenever I started checking out Unpacking, it does what it does so well and in such a nice, cozy amount of time, for lack of a better term, to where it was my morning coffee game. I go in, I grab a cup of coffee, and I do a level, and it was a very wonderful way to start off my day. And I think that's how a lot of people experience it. I know that's how my friend experiences it. But now I've begun going back and doing my second playthrough, like you mentioned, where I can go back through. And now that I know the story beats and I can kind of have a story that resonates more with me because I know where it's going and I can see things in deeper detail, I think that adds more replayability than a lot of people might realize at first glance. And so I think that's pretty great.
Yeah.
I think we kind of aim to make a game that would both kind of respect your time a lot, but also be very dense. So it's like
dense is a word we used a lot to describe it.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there, but it's all about just kind of I guess being respectful of your time was one of the principles.
Yeah, but the denseness of it is something that I really like about the game, and it's both a strength and a weakness for it, especially when it comes to like promoting it on social media. Like, as we were we were working on this game for years in the public eye, because the whole reason that we got to develop it was because it went viral. So we had to keep people's attention for like 2-3 years. And we were not able to share too much because we didn't want to spoil the whole story. We didn't want to have copycats, and we didn't want to like rob ourselves of marketing beats that we could do later as the game approached release or was released. So we made the decision that up until quite late in development, we didn't show anything beyond the first 2 levels. After that, not anything beyond the first 3 levels. And I think finally on release, we showed like 1 screenshot and like a tiny bit in the trailer of like level 4. And I think that ended up being a very good choice. But yeah, the thing is, the game is so dense that you show 1 screenshot and you can reveal like a quarter of a level, or even in the case of smaller levels, like the whole level. And it's a level, and like each of these rooms, like we'd work on it for months,
Mm-hmm.
And you can reveal it all in 1 screenshot. So what we did instead was we would show like bits and pieces from it. We'd show specific items, we'd zoom in on an area, show an interaction, that sort of thing. But yeah, it does mean that if a player comes back to it, you can actually spend like many hours like looking at all the items, trying to figure out what everything is and what things mean, and what do these characters do for a living, and what are their relationships like, and fans now are like putting together we're putting together a wiki about the game and trying to puzzle like what everything is and what all the characters' relationships are like. And it's just so fun to see them like doing that detective work, because that's exactly what we had in mind.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know that you guys have built a very strong community around the game. Even just seeing what people post on Twitter and the interactions that come from that, I think it's pretty amazing. You did mention there's one detail that has yet to be found. Can we get an exclusive hint, or are we just keeping that to see if somebody finds it?
A little early,
I think we're waiting to see if people cotton onto it.
Yeah,
So
fantastic. It's great that things like that have still gone undiscovered, though. I think that speaks to the detail of the game where
I mean,
you
there's multiple secrets really, but one really big one, I would say.
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean the thing about the thing about the density of the game is like so many little touches that like sometimes people notice and it's really good, and other ones kind of pass by people and stuff. And it's been really rewarding when sometimes someone will just call out something that we weren't sure if anyone saw and they did, and it meant something to them. And we're like, I'm glad we did that. Like,
Oh, one I really liked was there's a particular set of items that we put into the game that Tim was very insistent should go in. Tim, you know which ones. It's the climbing gear. So Tim used to do bouldering, and we put a pair of bouldering shoes and a chalk bag into the game. And the shoes, like some people go, okay, they're some kind of shoe. But the bouldering bag, a lot of people are like, what is this? But anyone who's ever done rock climbing or knows anyone who does rock climbing is like, oh my God, it's bouldering gear. And like, I think on the day of our release or the next day, someone posted on Twitter, like, I have never felt so seen in a game. And it was a screenshot of the bouldering shoes and then him holding an identical bouldering shoe in real life.
That's so
Like
cool.
absolutely identical. Yeah. And it's like these little things that, yeah, to some people it's kind of like, what is this? I guess it's something sporty, or I guess it's a shoe. It's like to specific people who have experience with that item means a lot. And having that like shown in the game means a lot to them.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I had a friend that did bouldering that I worked with a couple of years ago, and so it was something that I picked up on because I had seen him do it, and use that kind of equipment before. But I think, like you said, it speaks to specific people, but it also speaks to these being specific people. These aren't just cookie cutter people that are created for this specific video game. These are people with backstories that you both have come up with, and these are legitimate living beings within this little world that you've made. And I think that's something that is. It adds so much value to what unpacking is presenting, that it's something unquite it's not quite like anything else that I've ever really played, and it's hard to come by that most days. um, so to round out our conversation here, can you give a hint as to what's next or where you think you'll be heading as a team, or anything that you have planned for the future at all?
So I think first up is we definitely want we're taking a bit of a break.
Well deserved. Well deserved.
Celebrate the successful release of the game. It's like the reception has been really good. We've been really happy with how it's all going. I know I've got some various kind of ideas for stuff spinning around. Yeah, definitely nothing we've got like ready to roll on to next.
Yeah, like I have some ideas that are also kind of rolling around my head. Tim has a lot more, and also a lot of prototypes that are already like in the works. But for me, I'm not sure what's next yet. I might want to work on another project that's like my own project, or I might want to join another team to kind of help someone else bring their vision to life, because this project was extremely like all consuming and was just, yeah, like I'd say 3 years of my life have been dedicated just entirely to this project and almost nothing else. And it would be nice to be involved in another project in like a smaller capacity, doing like, game design, level design, narrative design, art direction, and actual art on the game, and UX and UI and business and production. It's all been a lot. And I'd like to do, say, maybe just UX and UI on a project. Like that would be nice. So maybe that would be the next thing, something a little smaller. And we'll see if there'll be another bigger project a little later on.
Yeah, well, I have full confidence that whatever both of you end up working on is going to be phenomenally executed and incredibly well done, because you have an amazing amount of talent that shines through phenomenally in Unpacking. And I just want to, once again, I know that I've been singing your praises, but kudos to you guys for such an amazing experience that is one of my favorite, not only indie games of the year, but it's just one of the best games of the year for me. And I can't wait to see what else is next from both of you. Definitely we'll be following along. Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you so much.
Before I round it out, is there anything else you'd like to add to the conversation, or a promotion for Unpacking, or whatever else you guys would like to talk about?
Sure. So you can find Unpacking on Steam, GOG, Humble Store, Switch, or Xbox, including Xbox Game Pass. And you can find our website at unpackinggame.com, or find us on Twitter at unpackingalife. You can find me at Renegade and Tim at
ironic account, but yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I thank you guys so much for joining me. And of course, to those watching and listening, thank you so much for checking out this episode of the podcast. I'm so thankful to Wren and Tim for being on to share more about the game. And if you do want to catch Xhibition, it's every single Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time on YouTube and podcast services around the world. But until next time, thank you all so much for joining us, and keep on playing.